Greetings, welcome back to CS195 Web Development. This is week 5, CSS fonts. Remember last time we went over inline and external ways to add the style. Now we're actually going to get into the fonts. So the first one is going to be the font family. There's quite a bit of lessons this week, but they're all pretty short, right? And they all pretty much are the same. You just got to kind of know the little nuances with each of them, each of the little different properties. So in this one, we're doing the font family, so our success criteria is to add a rule that changes the font of an element using the font family property. So we're going to watch the video real quick. We'll go over a little bit of information and then we'll try it out. So let's watch the con video and then try it out.
You've seen how to change the color and background color of the text on your page. But there's so much more that you can do with text and CSS. To start off, let's change the font. What's a font? You probably already know what one is, but you may not know the word for it. It's the style of the letters that make up the words, like whether the letters have flourishes on them or how thick they are, or if they look like they're written with an ink pen. Here, it'll be easier if I just go ahead and change the font family on this web page. I'll go to our CSS rule that selects all the paragraphs and add a font family property here. Say font family sans-serif. Do you see how the letters changed? Notice they look a bit simpler now? Okay, now let me change the font family back by specifying serif instead. Notice the letters look a bit more complex. A serif font is any font that has what looks like little feet on the letters.
So you can kind of see how there's like the little curves on the T's, the line under the F. That's a serif. That's a serif font.
Tell the browser to use a serif font family. It will use the default serif font for the computer, which is usually the Times New Roman font. I'm not a big fan of that font though, so I'm going to change it back again to sans serif. The sans comes from Latin and means without. So a sans serif font is one that doesn't have those little feet on the letters. That's why the letters look simpler. When we tell the browser to use a sans serif font family, it uses the default sans serif for that computer, which is usually Arial or Helvetica. But here's an important point. It'll pick the default font of whatever computer the viewer is on, not the author. So
that's an important concept to understand. There's some other default or generic fonts out there that you can type in, but it's going to be the computer, the browser that they have is what's going to be picked. But it is a good fallback to have, as we're going to see in a little bit.
We may very well be seeing 2 different sans serif fonts right now if your computer has a different default than mine. Sometimes I'm okay with that, but other times I'm picky, and I really want to make sure that whoever's viewing my web page sees it in exactly the same fonts as me. In that case, I can specify the precise font name, like Helvetica. This will work as long as both you and me have Helvetica on our computers. But not all computers have the same fonts, and in that case, the computer will just ignore the property entirely. Luckily, CSS lets us specify a fallback font family, a backup.
Also, besides having a backup, you can actually, when you run your own server, and I'll show this to you in a different video, you can actually give them the file, right? So if you want them to have Helvetica and they don't have it, you can have that file on your web server and then just give it to them and then they can use it. But there's a very special way you have to do that. So that'll be a different video, but the key is having that fallback.
In case a particular font doesn't exist on a computer, we just add a comma after Helvetica and then bring back sans serif there.
All right, so do notice that. You also notice that she put quotes around this. You only absolutely need quotes if you have multiple words, like Times New Roman, because there's spaces. So you have to put quotes around it so it knows it's all one word, because remember, commas mean you're going to start a new one. So if you have spaces, the computers would be like, well, you forgot to put the comma. So you have to put multiple words in quotes. You can put everything in quotes. She can put sans serif in quotes, but you absolutely have to put in quotes multiple words, and then comma in between them. You can have lots of different Helvetica, Arial, sans serif, a lot of fallback fonts.
Now the computer will look for Helvetica, and if it can't find it, just use its default sans serif font. Generally, whenever you specify a specific font name, like Helvetica, you should always specify a backup family name as well. Besides serif and sans serif, there are a couple other generic font family names we can use. If we wanted our lyrics to look more handwritten, we could specify font family cursive. Nice. Or if we wanted the lyrics to be a bit fancier, we could try the fantasy font family.
Neither of those look really special, at least in this browser. So again, but it has everything to do with what the browser has as its fonts.
Or what if we wanted them to look like they're written on a typewriter? We could specify the monospace font family. A monospace font is fixed width, meaning that all of the letters take up the exact same width. And in fact, you've seen a lot of monospace fonts here on Khan Academy because we always use monospace fonts for code editors. That's because we want all of our code to line up, regardless of the letters in the words. Okay, now that you know how to change the font family, use your power wisely. If you want your page to look good, limit yourself to a few different families and come up with pairs of fonts that look good together. But hey, if you don't want your page to look good, then the world is your ugly oyster.
All right, so again, you'll need to understand these generic fonts because they're going to ask for them in the challenge. So make sure to read the challenge, giving you a warning. You need to know those generic fonts. So let's go back and try this out. Again, we learned about monospace, fantasy cursive. Those are generic fonts. Again, you got to put quotes around Times New Roman. And then you can just comma, comma, comma to add them all together. We went over sans serif, so let's just try this out. Again, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because really the biggest piece, the syntax is the same, right? So I'm not even going to add another rule. I'm just going to go ahead and add this property to a rule I already have. So again, you just type in font, family, colon, it automatically puts the semicolon there for you, and now we can try all the different things. So like generic cursive, and you can see that's what my computer thinks cursive is. You can go back here and you can try sans serif. So right now it's already a serif, right? You can see those little legs at the bottom of the font. It's already a serif, so we can do a sans serif. And to prove that was already a serif, I take away that in serif, and you can see it changes back to its original font. So whatever font it already is already the default font for serif. So let's go ahead and try something else. We'll do times, comma, and so as you can see, Times is the default font. Let's go ahead and try and get to Arial. And it looks like Arial is the default sans serif font. So this is how you set up the fonts. You can Google all the different fonts you want. We'll have another video on how to actually add the special fonts, but that's the basics of it. So go ahead and do your practice, your challenge, your journal entry. We'll see you next lesson.